Good morning, Suncoast. How we feel this morning? Let's sing this out. Got knocked out 7 times last year. I fell down, got stuck in fear. Is this it? Is this how it all ends? Is this it? I knew the words to tell myself to hold me back. The things I felt, I know. God, I know. Come on. I don't want to say one more minute. I don't want to say you're not in it. I don't want to wait here one more night. I don't want to stay here all my life. Someone when it came to the wire, I ain't gonna cave to the pressure. I think I'm gonna be okay. The motions got the best of me, and waiting to the worst in me. Is this it? Will these just wasted years? Is this it? I knew the words to tell myself to hold me back. The things I felt, I know. God, I know. I don't want to say one more minute. I don't want to say you're not in it. I don't want to wait here one more night. I don't want to stay here all my life. Someone when it came to the water, I ain't came to the pressure. I think I'm gonna be. I think I'm gonna be. Is this my alibi to make me feel alright? Is this the reason why I'm barely getting by? Is this my alibi to make me feel alright? Is this the reason why I'm barely getting by? I don't want to say one more minute. I don't want to say you're not in it. I don't want to wait here one more night. I don't want to sit here all my life. Someone when it came to the wire, I don't want to cave to the pressure. I think I'm gonna be. I think I'm gonna be I think I'm gonna be Suncoast, how we feel this morning? It's great to be here with y'all.
I'm living in a grace where everything is more than I imagined, where what is undeserved is freely given. All my regrets and my failures, all of my wrongs have been left at the cross. All that remains is the Father's love. Oh Lord, you take me as I am. Over and over you call me.
I'm out here in the open, trying to stay the path. Somewhere in between the promise and the place it comes to pass. Who knows how it'll cost me or how long it'll last? But I told you I will follow, I'll never take it back. I'll hang on every word you ever said, for I know you're faithful, and I'm still waiting on a wealth of promises. But I know you're able. If ever I stray, if ever I fall, won't you call me homeward? Won't you call me homeward? Well, I asked you more than once to hurry up the pace. What if where you want me is exactly where I am? 'Cause what I learned from waiting is waiting never lies. Didn't bring me this far just to bring me back. Oh, you're too good for that. I hang on every word you've ever said. Oh, I know you're faithful, and I'm still waiting on a wealth of promises. But I know you're able. So if ever I stray, if ever I fall, won't you call me homeward? Won't you call me homeward? Sometimes I feel you, sometimes I feel like I don't. It's faith more than feeling. It's like seeing the invisible. Somehow I see it. Oh, that lies at the end of the road. And I don't know the timing, so I'm guessing it's not mine to know. Oh, help me believe it. Those days when I feel like I know faith isn't feeling. Is it trust?
beneath the surface of my anxious imagination beckons a calmness that is found in you alone. It washes over every doubt, every imperfection. Jesus, your presence is the comfort
breaks within your breath, and time runs its race within your hand, and my mind runs wild to comprehend what no mind on earth could understand. Your ways are higher, your thoughts are wilder. Love came like madness, poured out in blood-washed romance. It makes no sense, but this is grace. And I know you're with me in this place. Here, now, all I know is I know that you are here now. Still my heart, let your voice be all I hear now. Come on. Spirit breathe like the wind, come have your way. 'Cause I know you're in this place. Faith makes a fool of what makes sense, but grace found my heart where logic ends, and my mind runs wild to comprehend what no mind on earth could understand. Your ways. Your ways are higher, your thoughts are wilder. Love came like madness, poured out in blood-washed romance. It makes no sense, but this is grace. And I know you're with me in this place. Now, all I know is I know that you are here now, and still my heart, let your voice be all I hear now. Spirit breathe like the wind, come have your way. Lift your voice this morning, sing this out. 'Cause I know that you are here now. Come on. So, God, I know that you are here. 'Cause I know that you are be seated.
Thresholds into the unknown, victories over darkness, failed expectations. All have shaped the prophet's soul. Our once proud hero reduced and raised to the greatness of a servant. Now in the twilight of the prophet's life, the journey's end is in sight. Will the hard-won lessons lead to memories that fade, or a legacy passed on to the next hero and their journey to greatness? Epic.
Good morning. It's good to see you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. I've been gone. I was gone last week doing a wedding in Arkansas for Mitch Burks, one of our own Sun Coasters who moved up there a couple years ago. So anyways, it's so good to be home. It's good to be here and to stand before you and talk to you about the last teaching in the series, Epic. And I want to say thank you so much to Troy, Pastor Troy, for doing a great job. Give him a hand, would you? Great job. Appreciate everything that goes on. So as we talk about Epic and what it means, before I jump into that, let me remind you, holidays are coming. One more week till school's out. Lots of things are happening. But aren't you enjoying the temperatures that we have outside? Whew. We love it. We love it. And if you're watching this from around the country, we hope you are. Come and see us. You won't regret it. If you're in Michigan where it's snowing, you'll be glad to come down. I talked to someone today that said that's happening. But, but we enjoy it. But we also enjoy our greater community outside. Thank you for valuing us by tuning into us every week. But what's the goal of the series Epic? What's the goal? It's really a profound look at our life and where we are in our journey in faithfulness. For this series, we've been looking at the prophet Elijah and his epic life of not all the things that he believes, but his faithfulness, how he lives his life. In the first week, he confronts Ahab with the consequences of unfaithfulness. Ahab, you've been unfaithful. You've disregarded God, and because of that, the blessings of God are going to be removed from your kingdom. And for 3 years, it didn't rain. And rain in Israel is considered blessing because it's so dry. In the second week, we looked at how Elijah was sent to the widow of Zarephath outside of Israel, and he took care of her and she took care of him. It was kind of a great relationship. She just had a little bit of oil, a little bit of flour, but as she provided for him, he provided for her. Every day there was more. And then the next week, week 3, we looked at the blame game. How when her son died, she couldn't explain it. She blamed God and she blamed Elijah. And really, when tragedies happen in our lives, it's amazing how often we blame other people. We just, we don't understand it, so we blame. And then week 4, Elijah was to present himself to Ahab, finally come back on the scene. Week 5, it's the choice, whose side are you on, the side of Baal or the side of God? And then week 6, keep looking for the hand-sized clouds on the horizon. Week 7, Elijah's fear and frustration. Week 8, in his quiet times, in the whisper, we rediscover God. So after Elijah went to the mountain of God, or Mount Horeb, in Hebrew, the word for mountain is Hor, or Har, H-A-R, and Ev is short for the word Elohim, for God. So Mount of God is Horeb, the mountain of God. So he goes to the mountain of God, and he heard from God. He went back and he did 3 things as he was instructed by God. What were the 3 things? Anoint Hazael over Aram, because prophets anointed leaders. Anoint Jehu over Israel, which is the northern kingdom, and anoint Elisha as your successor. Now, folks, it really helped me if these guys wouldn't name their successors just one letter off. So you go from Elijah to Elisha. It'd be a lot better if you'd name it differently, but that's just the way it is. I mean, a lot of you have sons with your name and you curse them as well. So you know who you are. It's about 50% of the guys in here. So, but God's instruction to Elijah at this point was all about succession, the next generation of leaders. So I want to look at the specific succession plans for Elijah. Listen to what it says. Anoint your successor. Can you imagine getting the memo? Go and anoint your replacement. Now, I know what your job is, But whatever your job is, can you imagine, you have the opportunity to appoint your replacement. If you're the head of the company, you say, well, that's no problem. I'm going to pick this person, you can do that. But if you work for Sarasota County Schools and you're a school teacher and you're going to name the next teacher that's going to take your job, probably not going to happen. If you work at Chick-fil-A and you're handing out stuff saying, my pleasure, thank you, my pleasure. So you don't have the opportunity to go to the boss, say, look, I know I'm leaving, but I've got this friend in the neighborhood who's going to take my job. That's not the way it works. Sometimes we cannot replace ourselves. Even as pastor in a denominational church, the last thing they want you to do is name your replacement. That's up to the church board. That's up to the leadership. It's not up to you. And I've lived through that as well. But here's what I want you to realize. It's a privilege for Elijah to anoint Elisha. And we're going to read about it. It's found in 1 Kings 19, verses 19 through 21. Not a lot to read today, which I know you're hurting about that. But when there's 20 screens, it gets a little long. But listen to what it says. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elijah then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done to you? So Elijah left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and he slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. And then he set out to follow Elijah and become his servant. What do we know about Elisha? What do we know about this next generation leader? First of all, what we know is very little. He was the son of Shaphat, but if you look, and he was overseeing 12 yoke of oxen plowing, and he was plowing with the 12th pair. What does that mean? It's like having a farm with 12 tractors. It wasn't a small farm. His father had some financial means, and he was respectful for his family. He said, I need to go back and tell them goodbye. And it almost seems like, what have I done to you? Really, it's a positive thing. I haven't done anything to you. Go ahead. You don't have to, you don't have to hurt me. You don't have to hurt each other. Just go do what you need to do. But he was committed to following Elijah. He slaughtered his oxen. And if you're a PETA person, sorry. But he slaughtered his oxen, and he used his plowing equipment to cook the meat, and he fed those around him. In doing this, why do we have this story? There was some symbolism here. What he was saying is, this set of oxen which are mine, I'm never coming back to plow this again. It's problematic when we want to change, but we keep coming back to the same routine. To sacrifice the oxen said, I'm not coming back. To quit your job in such a way that you would never go back is an expression we use for that. It's called burning bridges. And one of the common phrases that I've said, and maybe you have too, we say, don't burn any bridges. Whatever you do, when you leave that job, give proper notice, don't burn bridges. Don't tell your boss what you really think. Fair enough? That's probably burning some bridges. You might want to come back. But how do we drastically change our life and not burn bridges? When Joshua, we'll jump back, was leading the children of Israel across the Jordan. They were about to cross over. The river was at flood stage. Remember the story? And he said, bring the priest, the clergy, they're disposable. Let them hold the Ark of the Covenant and let them walk into the river first. And when they walked into the river with the ark, it was at flood stage. And as soon as their foot hit the waters parted and they walked through. Then they sent people back into the middle of the dry river bed, got 12 stones, and they put them up as a marker and a monument to remember this is the place we crossed through on dry ground. Here's the interesting thing about the Jordan River. When you get up to a Jordan River, it's a barrier. You can't get to the promised land unless you go through the Jordan River. But when the river parted and they went through on dry ground and it closed behind them, guess what happened? The bridge was just burned for them ever going back. There's no retreat. They would never be able to go back to Egypt at this point. They couldn't go back in the wilderness because that which kept them out now kept them in. I think that's an interesting insight. Elisha would never go back to farming. How do you know? Well, to use the common day, he burned his tractor. He killed the oxen and sacrificed them and made a meal out of everything, used the plow equipment to build the fire because he said, I am never coming back. So how do we leave behind the old when we're challenged to take up a new possession, a new calling? Can you imagine if you want to get rid of some of your former life, you can't make it too easy to go back? How many things in our past we like to forever surrender to God and never go back? We many times try, but we take steps, but we never burn the bridge. For example, it's true of addicts. People with addictive behavior, it seems like I want my life to change, but the routine stays the same. It's true of alcoholics. I don't want to drink, but I'm around places where a lot of people are drinking. It's true even of smoking. My brother, Jimmy, who is 6 years older than I am, he passed away a few years ago, but he smoked his entire life. My dad smoked, my brother smoked. I grew up in a family that smoked a lot of cigarettes, but he was always saying, I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. He had cigarettes stashed everywhere. I've quit, but then he'd sneak cigarettes. Finally, the day came to where he burned the entire stash. He said, I'm never going back, and he did not. There can be finality to every bad habit or addiction. Some bridges must be burned to make that happen. Some oxen and plows must be forever extinguished. It was time for Elijah to leave the comforts of home and follow his dream to become a prophet. See, God was obviously a great part of his life. God whispered to Elijah, anoint Elisha as a prophet, not just any prophet, but as your successor. And after he said goodbye, burned the equipment, and did the whole thing, he set out to become Elisha's attendant. So, how did this start? Elisha's out plowing. Elijah comes up, and he has a prophet's cloak. You know what a prophet's cloak is? The best description I can give you is it's like a big lion skin or a big bear skin rug with the head maybe still on the back, and you wrap it around you. I mean, this is tacky. And these guys live in the desert, so you know what the odor must be like? You could probably smell a prophet before you could see the prophet. They're just saying. But he walks up, and I don't know why Elisha would be so excited about this, but Elijah takes off this big bearskin wrap, his mantle they call it, and it's huge, maybe weighed 30 or 40 pounds, and he places it over his shoulders. It was the most honor that Elisha could ever have in life. I mean, this gesture became his identifier. Now, Elijah was the teacher, Elisha was a student. If you get them confused, here's my little device. J comes before S. Elijah always comes before Elisha. One was the mentor, one was the mentee. What does a relationship like this look like? We need to know. Why? Because I'm convinced we need more relationships like this in life. As we begin to consider the future, and at my age, I do consider the future, we need to look for those who might carry the message to the next generation. We need to begin to pour our lives into others so that they might become what we were in the past generation. Folks, I'll tell you, one of the things that's on my mind continually is where is Christianity going in the next generation? It's not faring well. And part of Suncoast DNA, our DNA, is that we want to posture Christianity to something that is not irrational, but it is rational. It makes sense. It meets needs. It's part of community where unity comes together. That's what we are. And we're trying to recreate or reestablish or not reinvent, but go back to this earlier version of Christianity that Jesus taught and apply it to our community, and we see if that works. Because I think we need to do something. And when we do that, I think we can have an impact on the next generation. So let me give you 3 thoughts today. They're in your notes. Fill in the blank if you'd like. But here's the first thought. Our epic journey suggests humility and obedience. Now, if we look at Elijah on Mount Horeb, he went to where God was and listened to what God had to say. Then he went out and began to put into action what God had whispered to him. I love this. He listened and he obeyed. What did he hear? Go back the way you came. He went back the way he came. go back to work. He went back into the tension and stress of his life to continue. He ran from Jezebel because he was afraid. And in his running, he ran toward God. He took a detour. You ever taken a detour? If you're going to be on Hawkins Road in the next week, you're going to take a detour. Starting tomorrow, there's a big sign right in front of the church. The road is closed as you go this way, as you go west. I mean, detours. Have you ever been sidetracked? Yeah, you have. You ever been derailed? Have you ever acted in a way that was not you? You ever thought about it? You go, that's not who I want to be. Maybe you were rude to a waitress. Maybe you were angry because of the news. Maybe you were cruel with a comment or raging in traffic. Have you blown it in a moment only to realize that is not who you are? And if you have not, I really need to learn some lessons from you. Because it seems like in my life, sometimes my comments are a little too fast, a little too sharp, and I go, sorry. You say, well, who are you talking to? Well, sometimes it's to my wife, and that's dangerous. But when you blow it, only to realize that's not who I want to be, and that's not the real me. Elijah seems to have lost his bearings for a while. It was not that he turned his back on God. It was not that he was disobedient. He was afraid. And he reacted by running from Jezebel, but running toward a place of security, the Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. Years ago, we had a family vacation, which we try to do annually. So we traveled, and my grandkids, I had 3 granddaughters, and one of them was only 4 years old, and she had her security blanket with her. Looks like this. See this? You ever seen little kids with security blankets? Oh, they keep them right here, and if you lose them, you better have more than one. But there's something about, they don't want them washed. They want to smell, there's a certain smell. They smell these blankets. And I had a granddaughter. This is her security. We're on a trip. She's got it in her little bag of stuff. And every now and then she'd pull it out. She'd keep it with her. She sleeps with the whole thing. And we're on a train up in the mountains, way up in Alaska. And as we're on this train, we get to go out on the platform. We're on the platform out front. It's just what you do. It's a safe place to go. But it's kind of noisy, and things are moving around quite a bit. And after she was out there for a few minutes, she looked, she said, I need to go back in. We said, okay. We opened the door. She went back over to the front row of her seat. She took her blanket, and she went, and it was like cocaine. She just needed a few hits. I mean, she just had a few breathing. And then all of a sudden she looked at it, she put it back down, she came back outside. I thought, that's kind of fun. And in a way, that's exactly what Elijah did. He ran from Jezebel, the chaos, the confusion, the pain. He went to the place where he knew God was, and he stayed there until he heard the whisper of God, and his security came back, and his fortitude came back, and he went back the way he came. He allowed the circumstances, he allowed them to overwhelm him. And it took him a few days to recover and become what God had called him to be. And who was that person? A man who would look danger in the eye, a man who would stand up before a king or a queen, a man who ran in fear but recovered to faithfulness. This is a great human story, but it's my story, and it's your story. All of us at times find ourselves in a place we need to go back to God and say, I need to start again. I need to start over. For some of us, it's every January 1. It's just a good time to start over. We're not there yet. We'll be there in a few weeks. But what happened next? Let's look at the second thought. You write this down if you'd like. Our epic journey of faithfulness includes passing the baton. See, God told Elijah to anoint Elisha. Elijah comes, he throws his cloak around him, he acts in faithfulness to his inner voice and begins the process of succession. He chose Elijah to follow him and become his replacement. And an epic life often has some kind of mentor-mentee relationship, father-son, mother-daughter relationship. Several years ago in the Olympics, do you know the U.S. relay team, the track team and relay team, was by far the fastest team in the world. The goal was not going to be a problem. No one could run as fast as they did, yet they did not win the race. You know why? Because when you run a relay, you run, and you got to run it behind the next guy. He's running, and you got to put this. He reaches back like this. This comes in his hand, and he takes the baton, and then he goes and he passes it to the next guy. The next guy. They couldn't get the transition of the baton right. If you drop the baton, guess what? It doesn't matter how fast you are. If you drop the baton, you lose the race. And as I think about this, I go, man, we have a responsibility to the next generation. We got a responsibility to make sure we pass on some of the good stuff that we know. Now, let me be honest. There's some toxic stuff you need to not pass on. There's a lot of dysfunction. Let it die with you. I mean, you just got to, it doesn't help us to do that. But how do we make sure that the next generation gets the message? How do we protect them and guide them into truth that will change their life? How do we help them? How do we guide them? Ready? We share our experiences with them. We model faithfulness. Well, let me tell you what you ought to do, what you should believe. Probably not something I want to hear. You ever had somebody that said, let me tell you what you ought to do? Sounds like some of my friends. Sounds like some of my family. Maybe sounds like me sometimes. Let me tell you what you ought to do. It's probably not the right way to start any conversation. Probably the way to start those conversations is, let me tell you what I've learned in life. Let me share with you how my heart was broken and mended. What can I do to help you? That's a good question. And not answer it. See, I think we tell our stories. We tell about our experiences, and we model faithfulness, which leads to the last thought of the day, and it's this. On our epic journey, we are to stick to the task. I mean, the Elisha story, honestly, we could teach about this for longer because we're not even getting much into Elisha at all. But the story continues in 2 Kings. Elisha had been following Elijah for about 7 or 8 years. That's not like this is a 2-week mentoring. 7 or 8 years, and there's transitions in the story. It was said and thought to believe that Elijah was going to depart this life, and no one knew exactly how he was going to leave, but everyone knew he was going to go. And it was thought that he was going to be taken up in kind of a whirlwind, like a tornado would touch down and take him. The teacher, Elijah, and the student Elijah traveling from one area to the other, they were traveling to a place called Gilgal. And then Elijah tells Elisha, you stay here. I'm going to go on to Bethel. Now, I've been to the area around Gilgal, and I've been to the area around Bethel. But Elisha says to his mentor, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. In the back of his mind, he goes, you kidding me? I've followed you for 7 or 8 years, and you're going to depart this life without me being there with you? I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to be there to help you. I'm going to do whatever you need. And there's a company of prophets. You see these 2 extravagant prophets, or kind of eccentric. And they were at Bethel, and they came to Elisha. And after conferring with Elijah, they went to him and said, do you know your Lord, the Lord's going to take God's going to take your master from you today? And Elisha says, yeah, I know it. Let's don't talk about it. Elijah then tells Elisha, stay, for the Lord's going to send him to Jericho. So they're going to go Gilgal. I'm going to go to Bethel. Not without me, you're not. Then he says, I'm going to go to Jericho. Stay here. Elijah said, we have to have this same conversation again. As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. And the company of prophets said, do you know that your master's going to be taking from you today? To go, is this a broken record? It's in Hebrew. Is it what? I thought we just had this conversation. And he says, stay here. He says, I'm not staying here. Surely the Lord lives, and as you live, I'm going to follow you. And you guys quit talking about it. He says, well, I'm going to go to Jordan. So he goes to Bethel, and then Gilgal, and then to Bethel, and then he goes over to Jericho, and then he goes to Jordan. And I've been to all those places. And Elijah still says, I'm going to be with you. When they get to the Jordan River, 50 prophets now have gathered. They want to see what happens too. And Elijah takes off his outer cloak, this big bearskin rug, and he touches the river with it. When he does, the river parts and they walk through on dry ground. That's an impressive trick. And then Elijah asks his student, as they get on the other side, the 50 prophets on this side, they're on the other side in the Jordan. He said, what do you want? Elisha, you're my mentor. You're sticking with me 7, 8 years. What do you want? Tell me, what can I do for you before I'm gone? And Elijah's response is interesting, and I've heard it misinterpreted a lot of ways, but what he says is, let me inherit a double portion of your spirit. You know, I grew up hearing preachers say, oh God, don't give me the single portion, give me a double portion. I want twice as much. And what he really was asking for twice as much as what Elijah had, and that's not exactly accurate. Elijah said, what you've asked is a difficult thing. If you see me gone, you'll get it. But what was he really asking? You know, when you understand inheritance in that day, it'll give some clarity. When he's asking for twice as much, when a father died and he had 3 kids, the estate was not split into 3 pieces. It was split into 4. The oldest son always got a double portion. What it really wasn't, he was the heir. He was the one that continued the name. He carried it on. And what Elisha was asking of his mentor, don't give me twice as much as you have. That's not it. What he was saying is, I just want to be treated like your son. I want to be the one who carries on your legacy. Treat me as your firstborn, your heir, and I will do the best I can with it. I mean, I want to be the one who makes a difference in the life of others. And as soon as he asked that, according to the story, a chariot of fire appeared. Now, I don't know what this is. I can't explain it. I don't even have, spaceships. I've heard those analogies, all kinds. You just make up whatever you want. I don't care. But I do know this. Somehow, some way, there's a chariot of fire, is what they described it as, and a whirlwind, and all of a sudden, Elijah was gone. And when he went up in the sky, somehow, Elisha cries out, Father, Father. Do you remember the movie Back to the Future? Remember they go back to the future, they go back to the courthouse, they got to get enough power so that, that they can get back to the present. And they hook up this cable that goes to the clock, and lightning strikes the cable right at the time the DeLorean hits that. And when it does, explodes and it goes back. And the only thing that's left is this flag that's flying in the sky. And it finally comes down and lands at Christopher Lloyd's feet as a scientist. And as I think about this story, that's what I think of. I think him being taken up, and all of a sudden what you see coming out of the tornado or whatever it was, it's just this bearskin rug, this mantle, and it falls down Elijah's feet. He picks it up. He walks back over. He puts it on his back. He walks back to the Jordan. He rolls it up, and as he does, there are 50 prophets on the other side of the river, and they're going, all right, he's got the robe. What does this mean? Where's Elijah? What happened to Elijah? Where now is the God of Elijah? Elijah takes the mantle, holds it up, and he touches the river. The water parts, and he walks through on dry ground. And you know what they say? The spirit of Elijah is now on Elisha. The transition is complete. Passing the baton, a double portion, a first son's portion. The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha. Now let me ask you, let me make this personal. How's that working in your life? In what way have you been able to pass the baton? Or maybe you say, I'm just not ready to check out. That's what I'm saying, but who are you mentoring? Who are you helping? Who are you encouraging? How much are you enabling someone younger than you, helping them to make a difference? How much do you and I want God? In the New Testament, Jesus tells his disciples, when they say, you are the Son of God, he looks at them and says, guys, out of all the great things you've seen me do, he talks about this in John, you too will do greater things than I've done. And then in another place, they call him the Son of God, and he looks at his disciples and he says, you too can be sons of God. See, the Spirit of Jesus is alive today. And it's been passed down from generation to generation. And I'm grateful for my heritage. And even though my mother and I do not agree on a lot of things, I'm grateful that she loved me and she showed me the love of Christ. The Spirit of Christ has been alive for 2,000 years. As you and I embrace that Spirit, we too have the privilege of passing it on to the next generation. Can I pray with you? Father, thank you for your love and grace. Thank you for the challenge of today. We are on an epic journey of faithfulness, and as we do, teach us to share the love of Christ with others. May we give it freely. May we give it in abundance. May our story not be one of advice, but a story of experience, of love and acceptance. Thank you for what you've done for us. No one else could do. It's the Spirit that lives in us even today. We celebrate in Christ's name. Amen. So would you stand, please? I'm going to tell you a story in closing. So I mentioned to you just a few minutes ago that, Mitch Burks, former staff guy here, I was last week in Arkansas where he was, I did his wedding. But years ago, Mitch lived down in Northport, and he ran our Northport campus. He was the pastor there. And he was on his way back up to Sarasota, driving up I-75 from Northport. Not as much traffic then as it is now. And he said as he drove along, all of a sudden, that hit his windshield was, as he's driving up the interstate, and he was going about 60, he said a dollar bill hit his windshield. He said he looked back and he saw some things fluttering around, and he pulled over and backed up to the interstate. Nobody's coming. He said he started just picking up money. He said he gathered, but it was ones, fives, tens, 20s. He finally gathered over $300. He said, I was pretty happy. Life was good until I found the wallet. And he said, I really regretted that it had an ID in it. So I was obligated to give it back. Now, I live in Saddle Creek down the road. And one day I was riding my bike, and as I'm riding down the road, on the side of the road, I find a $20 bill folded up. I pick it up. Becky stops. She goes, what are you going to do with that $20 bill? I said, I'm keeping it. There's no wallet. There's no ID. She said, well, my wife's, I don't know. I said, look, if it make you feel any better, I'll just put it in the collection box at Suncoast. So if that's your 20, good luck. You just gave it to the church. But a few weeks ago, I was driving around the neighborhood, and as I drove by, I saw some money floating. And I stopped my car, backed up, and got out of the car. There's nobody around. I said, what is this going to be? Now, do you think it was $1? Nope. How about a 5? Nope. How about a 20? No. 100? No. It was a coupon for a cell service. Somebody's trash blowing in the road, and I thought it was money. Now, here's my lesson. It's a stretch. I always want to be keeping my eyes open for the discarded items in life. Keep my eyes open, because sometimes the stuff that blows in the wind, maybe a family member, I know one day it was me. And I'm so glad my Heavenly Father stopped by and took notice. And even though I didn't think I was worth much, I've been in his possession ever since, and he loves me today, and he loves you. Thanks for coming. God bless.